Hello everyone and welcome back to another video with On Point Politics, and today we're going to be looking at the Senate map and what it has in store for 2024. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this, and make sure to go ahead and donate to the Michigan and Pennsylvania poll crowdfunding. We are crowdfunding for conducting two polls, one in Michigan, one in Pennsylvania, with 750 registered voters with SoCal Research, so any support would be greatly appreciated. Now, to basically preface the context for this Senate prediction, something you guys have to know is that presidential tickets during the presidential years always have a big influence on the lower races. So, for example, presidents tend to kind of help out Senate and House candidates in the same state that they are on, which is not usually the case during a midterm. Usually the governor will be the top of the ticket, or a top senator will be the top of the ticket in a midterm, but presidents have a lot more pull because the presidential years have a lot higher turnout. And so ticket splitting, especially with the Donald Trump era, has actually gone down. And two things to preface this. Number one, Donald Trump has never won a state on the federal level and not had the Senate candidate also win. Now, this is not guaranteed to happen this year, as I do have pretty close projections in some states. But just to preface this is my basically map model for the 2024 election. It has Trump and Vance getting 343 electoral college votes to Biden and Harris's 195. Remarkably, New Hampshire and Maine at large are actually pretty competitive on this map. And so we're going to be going ahead and filling out the Senate map based on the model that I've created for it. And so you already see here, all of the safe states have basically already been filled in here. Those include California, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maryland, and then Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, Nebraska, and the special election there, Missouri, Indiana, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Mississippi. These are all going to be in that safe Republican column as of right now. Now, for the likely Republican states, we have the state of Texas coming in at a likely margin of 13 points for Cruz. I mean, the polling here has been really good for Cruz, anywhere from like 9 to 13 point leads for Cruz. And if we look at the last election here, we'll actually see that Trump won the state by almost 6 points. But in 2018, we'll see that Cruz only won the state by 2.5 when Democrats won the Senate popular vote by 20, indicating that the seat kind of started trending to the right on the Senate level. However, I do expect it to trend to the left, as the model basically indicates that this Senate map right here is going to be a tied national environment. So you're seeing a 20-point shift from the Senate environment from 2018 to now, and that's why you get these really large shifts from those two cycles. That's why you're kind of seeing that basically take place. And we see, the other likely state is going to be the state of Florida, coming in at 8.6 percentage points. Polling has had this, in the high single digits. And based off, the previous victory of Rick Scott and Nelson winning very big in 2012, this definitely has an impact on the seat itself. And that's why it is going as about a 9-point victory for Rick Scott as of right now. The state of Florida has been moving to the right. Republican voter registration has increased very, very heavily, and that's why you're seeing, a really big shift there. And what's very interesting is that Republicans already have 50 seats, and if Donald Trump wins the presidency, J.D. Vance would be their tiebreaker, and Republicans would effectively hold the Senate if it was tied. You see, look how many seats the Democrats have to actually defend, and Democrats actually hold every single one of the blank seats that you actually see right here, including West Virginia. Believe it or not, Joe Manchin is a Democrat senator out of West Virginia, but he is not running for re-election, presumably because he realized that he really didn't even have a chance with Trump on the ballot. And so that's why we are having Jim Justice as the apparent winner of that seat as of right now. He will more than likely win by double digits. I actually have him winning here by 33 points. So it is a very impressive victory in West Virginia. This is just after not that long ago where in a D+20 national environment, Manchin was able to hold on by 3 points. So even the swing kind of makes sense, because I would expect the seat to kind of trend to the right. So that 33-point victory in a tied environment would actually make a lot of sense. Now, going to the other likely states, we have the state of Ohio at basically 7 points for Moreno. Now, I know polling is really, really bad for this race. I know that Sherrod Brown is ahead, but you got to understand a lot of this Senate polling is not going to account for top of the ticket down ballot effects and doesn't necessarily include voters that would vote for Trump that would basically fill out the Republican ticket down ballot as well. The fact that the seat has been trending to the right the past 12 years, and the fact that the polling here is somewhat decent. I mean, Sherrod Brown is still up, but clearly there is such a big national shift, and Donald Trump is winning the state by so much that you are going to have Moreno basically win the seat as of right now. The next seat we're going to be looking at is Tim Sheehy's race, John Tester's incumbent Democrat seat in the state of Montana. This, in my forecast, is actually going to be a really impressive victory. It's actually going to be a 13-point victory for Tim Sheehy in the state of Montana. And the reason for this being is because Donald Trump is going out there in my model and winning the state by about 30 points. And so that's definitely going to play a big factor. But either way, I cannot see the Republican candidate basically underrunning Donald Trump by 20 to 29 points. Like, that's kind of ridiculous, especially that ticket splitting has become way less of a common phenomenon. Now, this Senate map does have a lot of popular Democrats, and we will see a lot of ticket splitting this year, but not to the point where a certain candidate is going to basically lose their race, but the presidential candidate wins by 30. That's going to be pretty unrealistic, and that's why Maryland, despite Larry Hogan polling very well in the state, is actually not really going to even have a chance at really winning it. I mean, if I were to go over here, my model actually calculates the margins in some states to see what it would look like if it wasn't a midterm, and Maryland right here is actually a 17-point win in the non-presidential year. Now it's a 20-point win. Funny enough, Massachusetts is also a lot bluer too. So Biden actually makes a couple of these seats bluer as well, especially in the Northeast. I find that pretty interesting as well. Now, looking at a state like, for example, we're going to be able to see here in the likely category for Washington a 10-point victory there. Now, what's interesting is that Senate candidate is actually a big underperformer. You're talking about in 2018, them winning by 16, while popular vote is about plus 20 for Democrats. And then in 2012, you run for re-election and D plus 12, and you win the seat by 20. Now that the Senate popular vote is tied, it would actually make perfect sense for the state to actually be about a 10-point victory for Cantwell. Now the seat actually technically even trends to the left, believe it or not, which is quite interesting. But there you have it. You see that she is underperforming most Democrats in this environment. And even the polling data for her is not looking good. You're talking about an 8-point lead against your Republican challenger. Not really great. And that's why the basically margin of victory is going to be about 10 in the model right now. New Mexico, we're actually going to get to that one later. Connecticut, on the model, if we go up here, is going to be a 14.5-point victory. We have the state of Delaware coming in at 11 points for the Senate candidate there. And New Jersey is only a 6-point race for the candidate there. I mean, Kim is basically running for that seat as of right now. But Bob Menendez, the Democrat who actually was just convicted on bribery charges, is actually still running for the seat as an independent. So he may take away a couple of Democrat votes. And in Republican internals only show this being like a 3-point race for the Democrat. So that's a really bad sign for them there. And in Virginia, we see that race is about a 6-point race as of right now. Hung Cao is a pretty good candidate, but the two polls we've had show Kane basically outrunning Joe Biden by quite a bit in the state of Virginia. Even in the state of New York, a 14-point victory for the Democrat. I mean, Trump basically has a state as like a 7 to 8-point victory. So that's why you're seeing a very competitive race on that Senate level as of right now compared to previous years. And that Democrat incumbent is not even necessarily that popular either. So that's why you're seeing that actually take place. Now, for the lean Democrat states, we have New Mexico coming in at just 4 points for the Senate candidate. And what's interesting is that the Democrat candidate is actually leading by 2 to 3 points in Republican internals. So that is pretty interesting to see the race actually be pretty close to a polling even suggests. And Maine at large is actually under a 5-point win. This is going to be Angus King's, really close election cycle for quite a while. I mean, in 2018 in D+20, he ended up winning by about 19 points. So it would actually make sense for the race to be closer if it was a tied national environment, a 20-point shift, and the state is trending to the left. So a 4 to 5-point win actually seems very reasonable there. We go to 2012, he won by 22 points despite the popular vote being D+12. So the seat has been trending to the right anyway. So that 4-point victory for him is actually not that out of the park as people are actually thinking it is. Now, for the lean Republican states, which is very fascinating, we actually have here Arizona and Nevada. Arizona is a 4.9 percentage point win for Kari Lake in this latest projection. And Sam Brown will also win by about 4.8 percentage points. Now, what's pretty interesting about these seats here, again, I used the polling data, trends in the seats. We used previous results. And what's very interesting about these seats is that Donald Trump is effectively winning these states by huge margins. I mean, he's winning Arizona by 10, which we have had polling recently that's shown the state being anywhere between 7 to 12 points. And if for the presidential level, and in the state of Nevada, the model has him winning by 13. So clearly, Donald Trump is carrying these Senate candidates to the finish line, but Donald Trump wouldn't nearly have to be winning by as much as people actually think he would have to be in order to get these seats over. I think Donald Trump would have to probably win these seats by maybe about 7 points, 8 points in order to actually get the Senate candidates over. So that is pretty interesting to see there. Now in Minnesota, the thing with this seat, basically the Democrat incumbent there, Klobuchar, is a very, very popular Democrat. I mean, if we look at her previous election, she's won by 24 in a D+20 environment. The seat actually basically voted to the left of the environment, which is crazy. And in 2012, the seat was D+34, which was crazy. Now, it did technically trend to the left from 2012 all the way to 2018. It technically did trend to the left. So really, it's been trending to the left as well once again. And so I wouldn't be surprised to actually see the state be a really massive victory. I mean, she is very popular in the state, so I really don't expect that race to even be competitive. Now, this is the part that's pretty cool. The Rust Belt states, all of the projections here are Republican. They're all tilt margins, and they're all 0.5%. When I plugged in all of the new polling data, when you plug in the results from the presidential level, this is actually what you get in the Senate model. They're actually all tilt Republican states. This actually looks like what would be a 2028 style type of electoral college map in a way, except for Montana being like safe R basically. But it's pretty interesting seeing that, because I expect New Mexico to be a lot redder on the federal level than even Minnesota coming into the couple years that are ahead. And Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are all 0.5 percentage point margins, which I think is absolutely hilarious. I clearly see here, if I actually go to the states, we actually see Wisconsin being a 10-point victory for Donald Trump. We see Pennsylvania being an 11-point win for Donald Trump. And we see the state of Michigan being a 9-point win for Donald Trump. And so all of these forecasts in that scenario would actually make perfect sense, considering that these senators are very popular. All the Democrat senators there are outrunning Joe Biden in popularity by a bunch. But we have seen the polling aggregate get very close in the Wisconsin Senate race, and the polls here always underestimate Republican candidates, especially during the presidential years, where the polls in midterm years tend to be more accurate, but in presidential years, you basically have these seats be way off. For example, Montana in 2020, Steve Daines ended up winning his race by 10. There was polling showing that the race was actually going to be competitive against the Democrat incumbent. It actually showed the Democrat incumbent ahead quite a bit. So clearly there's something going on there. Even Rick Scott in basically 2012, Bill Nelson, like the polling there actually had that race a little bit closer than expected. He ended up winning by a really big amount, but clearly the polling data does not basically factor in the top of the ticket effects, and that's what the model is basically designed to do. Now, again, if we didn't have a top of the ticket, Wisconsin would be a 6-point win. So would the state of Michigan. Michigan actually rounds up to 5, which would actually make sense considering the fact that that seat has always voted to the right of the Wisconsin seat for the past few cycles. Virginia would be a 10-point win. Washington would be about 11. That would kind of make sense. Ohio would be a 3-point win for Sherrod Brown. Again, that makes sense. New Jersey's an 8-point victory. Montana would flip Republican. The West Virginia seat would already be safe anyway. We would also see Texas be about a 9-point victory. We would see here Arizona actually goes Republican, by the way, funny enough. So, and so does Florida. So, and Florida's seat, believe it or not, is actually way closer without the presidential top of the ticket. It's actually only a 1.8 percentage point victory, which makes sense because Rick Scott's elections have always been very, very close during these blue wave years. And we see even Arizona actually still goes Republican, believe it or not. So even though it actually still goes Republican, and that actually factors in the incumbent president's approval rating. That's actually being factored into the model. If you had the same disapproval rating for Joe Biden that you did during the 2022 midterms, which was only like -7, Arizona would actually be a tilt Democrat victory for Gallego in the off years. So everything actually kind of lines up pretty nicely here with the fundamentals that I've actually incorporated in the model. It's just that Biden is so unpopular that they would actually lose a couple seats. Republicans would basically be at 53 Senate seats. If this was like a non-presidential year, they would still be at a 53, 47 majority in the Senate as of right now. And so if you guys did enjoy this video, please make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.